So what types of languages are supported in R Markdown? Well, there's a lot of language support. You can write Markdown text, you can write plain text, you can write LaTeX. There is a YAML header in R Markdown documents that can control meta options and different things. But as far as like code chunks and running code like you would in, say, like a Jupyter notebook or something, there's a good amount of support. You don't need to do any specific kernel stuff. You just like download packages, and there's native support in RStudio. And then, yeah, you can run operations. You can just insert, like right here, you can insert a chunk. And like I got some examples in here. Here's an R code chunk, just running, making some variables, multiplying them, assigning them to a third variable, cat out this variable, and give it the square root so we can run that. So here's some options with the code chunks. And we have options here. I never use that one, but I can run this chunk, or here are some hotkeys. If you do Control Enter, it'll just run a single line. So I'm going to run this X line. X now receives, you can ignore that. X now receives the value of 7. And if I did it for the next one, Y would receive 11. Yay. So you can see over here we got some variables in our global environment. That's X and Y. They have those values. And then what if I want to just run the whole code chunk? Like I don't want to have to click this button and drag my mouse over there. I just want to run, or we're completely using hotkeys and Vim. And we don't want to have to rely on the mouse. So if we don't want to rely on the mouse, we can just do Control-Shift-Enter. And that'll just run the whole code chunk. And it'll even give you the result here because I have the cat function. But here's the result. So 7 times 11, the square root of that. There we go. We just ran an R code chunk. Because you can see here in the braces, you got 3 grave symbols, 3 here. And then in braces, you have the language. Now this is different from Markdown because Markdown, you just have the language written out here and it'll just give syntax highlighting. But RStudio and R Markdown will let you actually operate and use the code, kind of like Jupyter notebooks. Now that was R code, but let's do bash. So in my home directory, I'm going to list out all the files, pipe those into grep, and pull out everything that begins with an M, upper or lowercase. I run that, and you can see I got some stuff. I got a Markdown document and a directory. So we can actually run shell scripts inside of RStudio. So imagine this with data science. If you are going to have a bunch of CSVs, you could easily just pipe those, use ls, pipe those into grep for specific criteria and the naming conventions maybe, and then take those files and then put those into a variable in RStudio, and then you can use that variable with an R function. So the way variables in RStudio could work with R Markdown is that you can make a Python variable or a variable with Python. You can use that variable in R programs or C++ into R or R into whatever. Like it allows through the APIs talking between the different languages and using variables and functions in different ones. So you can get the strength of all of these languages with none of the weaknesses. Say you have a very, very large data set, and you don't want to actually have to write it in R or Python that might be slower, and you want to actually do this operation on this large data set with C++. With the RCPP package, you can do that. And then you could take the results of that operation and give that back to Python or R. So there's a lot of language support in here, at least as far as running code chunks. And I don't even list out all of them because I don't even know what stan is. I don't write D3. I use C3 at work and for my blog chart, but you can write D3 code for data visualization. And then, I don't know what stan is, but we also have Python support. If you have the reticulate package and Python installed, there's hello world. For SQL, it can run SQL, but you actually need a database connection to actually run this code. So like at work, I actually have a connection through the DBI package and ODBC packages. The two are SQL Server, and then I can actually run full queries from RStudio and get data back from our SQL Server. The only issue I've found with that so far is that it's kind of slow with okay sized data sets. Like big data, we're talking like millions of rows. Well, I'm getting lag with like 100,000 rows. So, I mean, it's a little slower. You might just be better off importing a CSV or something. Or who knows, maybe I'm just doing it wrong or returning too much, and you could just be more simplified by using dbplyr or something. But the only issue besides the lag and the speed with the data size that I found is really just, I haven't figured out, can you or can you not use views, like, table views with SQL in the code chunks? But I digress. There is SQL support. You can run queries and then have those queries inputted into a data frame by saying, like, in here, it's one of the chunk options. And I'll get more into chunk options in the future, but like you can say like output dot var equals test or something. I don't know. I don't even know if this is one because the syntax highlighting is not, or the IntelliSense isn't working right now. But you can actually have this code chunk output its output into a variable, in which case this could be a data frame or a data dot table, in which case your SQL query returns something that our code can then do operations and exploratory data analysis and visualizations on, which is exactly what I've set up for my team at work. So we can actually do all of our data munging and all this like organization and structuring with SQL if that's the stronger skill set, and then return things to just do visualization or minor like filtering with dplyr in R. But so we have SQL and even like CSS. Now CSS wasn't a listed option, but you can actually run CSS, JavaScript. Even if the code chunks aren't in there as a default insert option, they still run because RStudio is actually made with the web stack, among other languages, but it's basically a web browser, which is why when you go to the web version of RStudio, it's basically the exact same thing. But what am I doing with the CSS? I'm saying that all my H1 headers need to have the font color of red. So let's knit this document and see what that does. Now I did have some options in my YAML header that affect my HTML output, my highlighting, and my theme. It's complaining about this. So that YAML stuff at the top, that's going to affect the output styling, but the CSS will be apparent and obvious. All right, output. So you can see we have an untitled document, but also my level 1 heading that I did with my only single hashtag symbol returns an H1 heading because we're making H1s red. So you can see that Markdown, again, is HTML, just very, very minimal syntax. It's a very simplistic syntax, so it's easier to just get your writing out there, styled, and just have it done. We have the output of all of our different types of code chunks, and all of this stuff can run basically like a Jupyter notebook, but in a just consolidated report. So this way we could actually run things in here like Jupyter notebooks, but then once we're pleased with the output, we can actually knit it together and create a very pretty and robust document for reporting, for analysis, or for your own interests, or even like writing research papers or reference papers, because again, you can have a bibliography, you can use Bibber, you can use LaTeX, you can use all this stuff in these documents. And so you can take advantage of all the strengths of all of these different things to perform data science, to perform analysis, to create good looking, professional looking documents, even if data science isn't even what you're doing. I would write my school papers in this now. It's better than Microsoft Word. And if I'm only writing papers and I'm not using code, I could just write it in Vim, which is exactly what I'm doing for this research over here I'm doing. So take advantage of these resources. You can use Shell, you can use Python, you can use SQL, CSS, the web stack, YAML, R, and just Markdown. Like, this is only scratching the surface of just Markdown. You can use Markdown documents to create a blog with blog down. You can create a book with book down. You can create a page with page down. And these are only some of the R packages. You could import different packages into your R Markdown documents to make your ggplots and your data visualizations even fancier, like I did over here, where I actually I commented it out. But if I remove these comments and take this out, you can even use Plotly with ggplots and just pass in a ggplot that's been put into a variable P1 here into your ggplot or ggplotly, and I can create, get the data in there first, and I can create an interactive visualization with Plotly. And this is the type of stuff that is possible easily in R and RStudio and R Markdown with very minimal code. This didn't take a lot. So when you start to understand all this stuff, you can create very robust documentation, great looking reports, and analysis on different things. And you could just write your own school papers in this file format and receive the benefit of just the simplistic syntax of Markdown, a plain text format, a non-proprietary Word format, and you'll never have to worry about anything. You got your references, you got your styling, you got code if you need it, you got everything you need in R Markdown. So I think I'm going to close this one at that, but code chunks, code chunk hotkeys, Control-Enter, Control-Shift-Enter, the little green arrow button, run your chunks, just like Jupyter Notebooks, see the output, see that it works and it is what you want it to be, knit your document together, and share. So R Markdown.